Question for you is as far as on employment perspective. Can you explain the hospitality model? You said something that you would create jobs for like executive type jobs, and also jobs as far as low wages. What about jobs that's in the middle, as far as in between jobs, people who are like for middle management type positions? Can you explain like the hospitality model as it relates to the whole medical Mart program?
Sure. I was chairman of the Convention Bureau in Chicago, which is which at the time had not received much government funding. It was really a volunteer association, and it was the largest convention bureau in the United States, at about 1,800 members, individual members, and that was in Chicago. And I did that for a couple of years, and we went through an enormous transition there where a lot of very good things happened, including the retention of a series of medical trade shows. And it struck me that the most amazing thing about the Convention Bureau and the convention industry, the hospitality industry in Chicago, is that Chicago's home to the Mercantile Exchange, the Board of Trade, the Chicago Board of Options Exchange. Illinois is home to Archer Daniels Midland, an enormous grain processor with so much of the land there is dedicated to the farm industry. The hospitality industry in Illinois is the largest single industry in the state. It is enormous. And it employs all sorts of people, from low-skilled workers at a living wage up through, those very well-to-do owners of hotels and others. But in between, there's an enormous infrastructure that is required to support the hospitality industry, populated by small mom-and-pop entrepreneurial operations that fill in the gap that you just described. And there are now enormous university programs and two-year college programs at all of the major educational institutions in Chicago that support those institutions. That is, Roosevelt University, for instance, has a great hospitality training program, and the city's infrastructure has now been built and job training around the idea that those young people will eventually go into the hospitality industry.
Yes, Mr. Kennedy, will the impact of increased taxation and cost detract from Cleveland being a cost-effective alternative in the convention marketplace? And Commissioner Hagan, do you think the current structure as a county legislative executive body aided in your development of a decision for the medical Mart?
Which one of those do you want to answer?
You answer mine. And
Well, I think Mark Falanga wrote them both. I'd say that the tax levels here in the hospitality industry will not, they will not affect our ability to attract trade shows and conferences to Cleveland. They will not be relevant to that decision. They are relevant in other places like Chicago and New York, where they're getting extremely high, but they're also high on a very high price per room basis. Cleveland, even with taxes, represents a bargain of a deal when you're staying in a hotel or eating in a restaurant here.
When you add 11 politicians to county government and think that's change, you're smoking something, because it doesn't change the fundamental question. And as somebody that's served for 21, 22 years now in public life at the county level, we need change. We need to have an effective way of dealing with the regional question. But the regional question that's not being addressed is the proliferation of some 60 suburban communities with fire and chief and police and other that cost the taxpayers money. The fact is that when you're looking at reform at the county level, almost 2/3 of the county government is based on judiciary and human services. And I think I want to underscore that. We don't have the power, that is, the Board of County Commissioners does not have the kind of power over the judiciary. You like to have the separation of those two different entities, the judiciary and the executive. And in addition to that, the county commission, which is really an extension of state government, so people can clearly understand that. The county commissioner's role is really to be an administrator to state government. Now, we have some local powers, obviously a quarter-cent sales tax that we can impose. We have other powers that that have been generated through the legislative process. But in my view, I thought we had proposed a reasonable approach as we go through this question of looking at a regional concept of government. This proposal of 11 districts, people don't even know who their state rep is or their state senator, and now you're going to impose a council. By the way, when you talk about politics, remember this, as you learn in the city of Cleveland and every other group, when you have 11-member council, somebody gets elected council president, county council, and they control 5 votes. And then the division happens when that council joins together, as Joe can tell you at the city level, when 4 or 5 of those members in council decide they want the roads paved on the east side of the county rather than the west side of the county. There are problems involved in that discussion. There's no real discussion about it. It's county reform. Let's embrace county reform. I'm not going to be here, let me underscore that, but I don't think that you're going to benefit from this proposal. I think there are some other alternatives that should be considered. But we've been shut out from that discussion as well. Yeah, Eric, go ahead.
Thanks. This is an important topic, but we've got a lot to talk about the medical mart today. Can we get another question?
Primarily, Mr. Kennedy, is breaking ground a sure thing, or are there contingencies that might knock us out?
I'm not aware of any contingencies. We're, hiring staff. We're spending money. We've retained, all of the network of consultants necessary to move forward. We'll receive a full engineering report from Public Auditorium in the next couple of days, which will guide our renovation, restoration of that project. And I'd say it's full steam ahead. I don't think there's a bump in the road that could dislodge us from future progress.
I'd agree.
Do we have another question from the audience? Go ahead. You're going to have to, pardon me for just a moment. Okay, go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
Thank you. My question is for Dr. Cosgrove. When you talked initially, you talked about how much travel you needed to do to outfit a hospital. I'm curious as to how much of that travel could be alleviated with a facility like the Medical Mart, and do the manufacturers buy into this type of a distribution model? Thank you.
Yeah, I've talked to several manufacturers about this, and there is substantial interest. You have to figure out that what they do now is they take their equipment and they go from one medical meeting to another around the country. If in fact you could establish this as a place to go to see 4 different manufacturers' hospital beds, and so you could make your mind up in one place, this would really establish this Mart as the place to go. So there's an advantage for them in terms of not having to take their stuff multiple places and having it all in one location permanently.
For the high end of the line, like the very expensive...
We're not, since you're not mic'd, we're not able to hear you. He was
So I have talked to the CEOs of Philips. I have talked to the CEO of GE, both of whom have had interest in the Medical Mart and having a permanent display.